All right, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Forward Thinking Founders. We talk to founders about their companies, their visions for the future, and how the two collide. Today, I'm very excited to be talking to Sudarshan Sridharan, who is the founder of Fion. Welcome to the show. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me, Matt. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm extremely excited to talk to you, mainly because I've never interviewed someone in this category before of product. This is like a super needed super needed product. But like I haven't seen it before. So I'm excited to talk to you about what you're working on. So people that don't know what Fion is, can you kind of share what you're working on and what it is?
Yeah. So Fion's goal is simple. We're here to stop fires before they start. And, usually due to uncontrollable human circumstances, wildfires are going to happen that we can't stop. Our goal is to detect them earlier than anybody else and use our algorithms, or we have a proprietary model to stop the fire from spreading.
So a couple questions. One, this is a very basic question. I don't know this market super well, so apologies for it. But how are you able to detect fires? Like, you don't have to give me your special sauce, but is it through satellites? Is
Yeah.
it through like drones? How like on a very high level, how are you even able to like get started with something like this?
Yeah. So the first iteration of this of Fion was to use drones and set up a network of like just physical cameras all across our like customer areas to see where fires were happening. But then NASA provides a suite of like satellite information that you can access, and so we use that. We built our own algorithms to like train the to sort the images a little bit better. And yeah, now we use satellite data.
So on like a basic level, let me know if this is right. So like I feel like the magic is in the algorithms and machine learning, but you ultimately
Mhm.
have these images that are being taken. You're then like scanning them, I'm assuming, with for like something that looks like a fire, and that's when you kind of like realize, oh shit, there's a fire. Let's do something about it. And if not on a high level, is that kind of how it works, or slightly
Well,
different?
we work with a bunch of different data partners to get that detection done. So it's not just any one thing. NASA has its own software. So NASA will tell you, oh, there's a fire here, but they only refresh every 12 hours. So we use other partners to try to get that down to 2 to 6 hours of data time. And right now the industry standard is about 3 days. They use what's known as human sentries in fire sentry towers to manually detect fires. The way the industry works is you're Matt Sherman, you live in Arizona, you walk outside and see half your city's on fire, you're calling 911, 20 other people call 911. They then go to 911 then goes to their local fire department, who will escalate that up to the local city or region or county, and then that'll go to the state. And then that might go national, or the state might say, all right, cool, let's allocate these people to go put this out. And it's basically just like a big like fight for resources right now.
I'd love to hear to back up a little bit and hear a little bit about the origin story for Fion. When did you start it? Why did you decide to start it? And like kind of how did it come into being?
Yeah, so I've got an interesting story. 7 weeks ago, I was supposed to be a junior at Clemson University, and or 8 weeks ago, and now I live in San Francisco running Fion. I started tweeting a lot, and I built this community for Gen Z kids in tech. And along the way, I realized I'd started several companies before and gotten funding and stuff, but I'd realized I wanted to be working on a company that was just very like going to actually have a material impact on the world. I'd run a nonprofit before, and so I realized I didn't want to keep doing like push a button to get a weed brownie delivered to you type apps. Yay, $10 billion valuation, but that's not really net positive for the world. And so yeah, I started tweeting about why aren't we using drones to fight fires? Why are we, sending in so many people? 24,000 firefighters suffered damages in 2018 while fighting fires on the fire ground. And that just seems like in 2020, where, you know, Toyota's supposed to announce like a flying car in 2 years, right? Why do we still have people who going out there? And then I kept tweeting about it, and my team reached out to me. I've known these guys for, years at this point. And turns out they'd been working on a fire spread prediction algorithm. So right now, to predict, once you detect where a fire is, if you want to predict where it's going to go, that's not really a solution that's available on the market. Things like wind speed have just recently been, like variable wind speed have just been added into like these algorithms, and no one's really got any sort of tech that's commercially available. And so we decided, okay, we've got this knowledge moat. Let's see where we can take this algorithm and see if we can take it out of academia and put it into commercial use for enterprises, governments, insurance companies, whatever it is. And so basically, yeah, I just kept tweeting about it, and I built enough of a cachet that people came to me. We put together this kick-ass team, and then, one by one, I started getting my friends. Our CTO was formerly at Deloitte. Our brand strategist, our head of brand strategy was at Apple before, worked at SoundCloud and all these other places. So we've got a pretty solid team from the data science side, from the technical side, from the business side. And so my job is mostly just to make sure we're continually driving the vision, make sure we're getting the best people on board, and make sure that we are, doing sales and getting those clients.
I'm kind of curious, when you got the idea or knew that this was a problem you wanted to tackle, how did you learn about it? Like, I guess, how do you know what to do every day and every day that passes? Because you're only like eight weeks in. I'm like, I don't know, 8 weeks into my startup too. Like so I'm it's kind of the same boat. How do you know when you wake up tomorrow what you're going to work on, and how does this change on a day-to-day basis? Or I guess, what's an average day for you?
Yeah. So this was actually a funny problem for me because I've never been in a situation where the tech is basically there and we just have to build a business around it. So for the first time, I was coming in to be like an operator almost, right? And they've been working on this tech for 8 months. They have, tested it, failed. And so I was like, what do we need to do? Like, how do you take this from a academia to, technology readiness level 10, like ready for business applications? So the first thing was, not talking about business, not talking about commercial uses, but understanding the space. So I took about 2 weeks just to, tweet at everybody in the fire space and be like, hey, can we chat? Just call up fire departments, just call up researchers at, different universities like University of Washington and be like, hey, what do you guys do? What is the space? How can I learn more? And it pays that two of our guys are also like researchers. So they were able to send over a lot of like academic papers, and I didn't understand a lot of it, but I was able to like talk to people and really understand, okay, here's where the industry is. Here's the problem, right? Like identifying, great, we have an algorithm that nobody else in the world has. It's quantifiably better than everything else on the market. But what does that mean, right? Like how do you use that commercially? And so first thing was understanding the market and understanding the shortcomings. That's really where we identified 4 key moats, right? It's basically that once we talked to people and understood the problem, we understood that detection right now, there's not a lot of software being used, right? It's all like California is not working with NASA, or, they're all super disjointed and there's no like central governing body. And so we can help with the detection, the spread prediction. Nobody's doing that. We have that. That's our moat, right? So let's do that. Let's make sure that whatever's out there on the market is actually accurate. Let's tell fire departments what factors are going to cause those fires, where it's going to spread. Insurance companies want destruction estimation. This is where our money's really going to come from, is telling people, hey, fire's going to spread here, and here are your properties that are going to get affected, right? Go deploy your private firefighting force or whatever it is. And that's called destruction estimation. That doesn't exist for wildfires right now because the spread prediction isn't where it should be. And then finally, of course, my team has stopped letting me know stuff that they're thinking about until they know they can do it because I keep tweeting. But they told me last week that, hey, we started testing and looks like we can actually even detect locations that are going to be at risk for fires. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So for me, now that I understand that, my job is mostly to, okay, do we have our pitch material ready for the fundraising? Is, our content person pushing out a bunch of content to like, for content marketing purposes? Is our data science team, are they still researching, testing the algorithm? How can I, last week I needed 1 million Google Cloud credits, right, to do the testing. I tweeted about it and I got it. So it's just a lot of like, where is the day-to-day needs for the rest of our team? Like, on the technical side, like, the user interface. I had to find somebody, once again on Twitter, to go make the, just the basic dashboard, the front end. And then I had to find someone to actually plug in like live data and see, hey, like, is this actually, is this going to work right? Where are the bugs, all this stuff. Then I, get connected to like the Los Angeles Fire Department. And I asked them, hey, what problems do you guys have? How do you foresee our tech being useful for you guys? How can we build it specifically for your needs? And so it's still a lot of like very early on like PMing stuff combined with just making myself useful to the rest of my team who are incredibly smart. And then trying to figure out, what do we need to be doing for fundraising? Do we even, right now, the latest thing I realized is when we prove our tech works next week, we're on track for like about the end of next week. We basically just that's all we really need. So I don't need to be focused on fundraising as much as I need to be focused on just getting letters of intent and talking to people to understand the problem.
So you mentioned in there a couple of times Twitter. Is this a new company that I haven't heard of? What is it? So Twitter. Obviously, we both know how powerful this can be socially and career-wise, and professionally. I'm curious for you. I'd love to hear a little bit of your, like, when did you realize Twitter was a machine and you could use it to get 1 million or whatever cloud credits and like so much more? Kind of what's been your journey and experience with Twitter when you first started using it to today, and how did you realize it was such a great tool?
Yeah, so I've been trying to break into tech since I was 15. And naturally I just, you'd read one article or something like that. You'd see one young person doing something or, and then all roads would just lead back to Twitter. And so I finally made a Twitter in about 2016, or finally got active on it. And for like basically 3.5, 4 years, nothing really happened. I was always watching people build their, build their profile. And I would always just see, one day these people would be nobodies. The next day they'd, have some product. And I watched my friend, he was 16 when he got accepted into Y Combinator. It happened almost overnight, right? Like he tweeted at Chris Sacca. Chris Sacca asked for a product on Shark Tank. He built it out, a CRM tool with his friend who was 14 at the time, I think. And
is this the Slick? Is this the Slick?
Yeah, Slick, yeah.
Oh, yes,
yeah.
Dude, they are legends. That's hilarious.
And so like that's what I was like, yeah, I probably need to learn how to do this stuff. But I wasn't really a builder at that time, right? So then I got to college. I decided that, I'd grown up with no friends. I decided that, everybody wants to party, so let's democratize access to parties. I built this thing called Party Talk with my friend Carson, which was just really helpful for, party promoters who wanted to list, like, basically Eventbrite with no transaction fees. I did a bunch of other stuff like that. My Snapchat ended up growing really big. So I like understood, okay, this is how you want to like market to people, and this is how you want to like push out content. And I was always pushing content out on Snapchat. And then when I started this community for Gen Z kids in tech called Gen Z Mafia in the middle of July this year, I finally had like, I got a platform out the blue. And then I took that and I was like, okay, I know what to do. I've been watching people do this for 5 years now. I've been doing this on Snapchat. Let's take that and let's apply it to tech. And I basically just, I think, played the game exactly how you're supposed to. With that comes also a lot of the downside, but it's definitely better if you never have to get on Twitter. I recommend that. But yeah, it's a very good tool.
You mentioned there Gen Z Mafia. Gen Z Mafia is like one of the most legendary groups of people I've ever like seen collected in my life. Like honestly, like the amount of talent that's in that group is like insane. And the thing is, no one realizes it until you all build what you're gonna build. Like in like a Gen, it's pretty much truly the Gen Z Mafia, just like the PayPal Mafia. What is that? And like, how'd you do it? Like how would you get such a smart group of people together? And like, what are your kind of expectations for Gen Z Mafia in the future?
Yeah, so me, Emma Salinas, and Carson Poole, we're the like 3 people who like started, I guess. We're all from North Carolina, and so breaking into tech was quite literally a physical barrier and just so much more. And so Carson, came in, was like, hey, we need to we need to make a community for kids in tech. Like, we've got some cachet now. I just come off like this big like press tour for my nonprofit that I started to help with COVID. And I was like, yeah, you know what? You're right. But nobody follows me on Twitter. And so then, I was like, talk to Emma. And so Carson got connected with Emma when he was in San Francisco. And so she tweeted out, hey, looking, if you want to join a group chat for kids, Gen Z kids in tech, hit me up. She got like 400 people. So we quickly had to go from Twitter DMs to like, just, all right, let's make a Discord server. Made a Discord server. And then from there, 2 days later, so that wasn't like on a Saturday, on a Monday, Bill Pulte, the Twitter philanthropy guy, DMs one of our friends, Jay-Z, who's like one of my best friends now, but I just met him on that server like 2 days before. He's like, hey guys, Bill Pulte just DM'd me. I'm like, you're lying. He's like, no. So I'm like, all right, tell him the council will deliberate if he can join or not. Because he sends it to this man. I didn't know he was serious. Later on, we like tell Pulte, all right, go ahead, join if you're serious. He joins, and he's like, how can I help? I'm like, oh, all right, we've got something on our hands. And then Sam Altman joined later that day. And then Mike Solana and Delian from Founders Fund. I was like, all right, don't know why people want it, but this is something that's very real, got a lot of value. Let's make this happen. And then very quickly, by that point, it already had like 150 people in the server. And, so Pulte DM me was like, hey, how can I help? So I was like, all right, great. Let's do a fireside chat. I didn't know what else to ask him, really. I was like, we just made this because, there's power in numbers, there's power in networking, and in the middle of a pandemic, you can't really effectively network. And so he came on, he did a fireside chat, got like 70 people. And I was like, okay, cool. Maybe we should do this again. So next week, Emma scheduled Mike Solana. And so then I did it with Mike, and this time a lot of people were like, yo, you did a really good job compared to last week. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should keep doing this. And so then like I just, we just kept getting more and more people. And it was like our way to like sort of like network and meet more, VCs. And then they started cutting checks. And so then everybody else was like, oh, we should come join this community. And so it was basically community building is just find a demographic that's got something in common, figure out what they need, and then get them value, right? And so that's like how it started. So where we're at right now is like we just push out products occasionally. That's how like a lot of people ended up like finding out about us. Like we've made 8 or 9 drops. A lot of our community members, get funded, and then they'll come back to the community to hire, or they'll ask for help. Same thing as what I'm doing, right? Like all of our team is from Gen Z Mafia. And then from there, it's now for the future, we're looking to, try to provide as many resources as we can to these kids. One thing we're trying to do is raise like a fund of some sort. So that way, like, they can get access to really top level VCs and LPs who like can put them in touch with clients off the start, and they can get talent directly from the server. It's over 1,700 people now. And then, we're basically just trying to like provide as many avenues as we can to help people break into tech and, get successful as fast as possible. We're trying to use tech to like just remove the barriers to entry, basically.
Hey, I'm all for that. As you know, I live in Phoenix, and I've also felt the geographic barriers, and what you're doing for Gen Z people that want to break into tech is like fantastic. So going back to your main gig at Fion, tell me, like, I know you just started it, but if you looked out into the next 5-10 years, like what could this look like? Or I guess in other words, what's your big vision for the company?
Right. Yeah. So like I said, the first thing the reason we started this is we had a knowledge moat, very simply, right? Like there are not a whole lot of people that can build this machine learning model that our teams built. And so there's a lot of applications from that, right? The next step in vertically integrating all of firefighting and like wildfire risk management is to try to get some way to set the controlled fires. So the way our process works is we detect a fire's gonna happen somewhere. We let the authorities know. They'll go set up a controlled fire, and they'll do a controlled burn to get rid of the fuel for any potential fires. Our next step is we are talking to a couple friends. Can't name the company, but they're a well-known drone manufacturer that is looking to build firefighting drones, or drones that can set controlled fires. So then all a fire department need to do is go and set out the fire, which is really easy because of brush fire. And then step number 3 would be creating what's known as a tethered drone, which is like a drone with like a water pump and a nozzle for like shooting fire that's attached to a huge tank of water. It's like a fire truck on wheels. And then that, you send that out to the controlled burn place. It sets the fire. It puts the fire out. Cool. Fire's controlled. And then from there, I think it's a very simple step of focusing more on like applying our spread prediction model for fires, retooling that for things like hurricanes, right? North Carolina was supposed to get hit by a Category 5 storm, and instead we got hit by a Category 3, and the Category 5 went straight to Richmond, Virginia, where I was quarantined. Right? It's 2020. We spend billions of dollars a year, and we still can't get spread prediction or like where a hurricane is going to go. Correct, right? And so like we basically just want to, once we sort of vertically integrate the fire management side of things, we want to like start spreading out into other natural disaster and recovery and prevention efforts. And we think that software is definitely the way to make that happen.
And then to make that happen, you'll obviously need some help, right? You'll need customers, investors, employees, all of that. And luckily, you got all those potential people listening to this on the podcast. So for my second last question for you is, how can the listeners help? Are you hiring? Are you fundraising? Are you looking for partners? How can we assist?
Yeah, so fundraising, I think we're going to be oversubscribed. So right now we haven't actually officially started, but Twitter DMs have just yeah. Also, I don't know if I'm allowed to actually say we're fundraising right now, even if we were. Yeah. So I don't think that'll be a problem. As far as hiring, since we have not raised, everything's for sweat equity. If you are a data scientist, if you're, somebody with connections in fire departments or, know any sort of sales, like we're looking for data scientists and enterprise salespeople as well as fire consultants to help us continue to drive the vision forward and make sure that we're a single tool that whether it's fire departments or enterprises can use to get all their fire needs done. And finally, we are looking to give away our software for free to fire departments, especially right now in California, Oregon, Nevada, Colorado, where these wildfires are raging on. We are trying to, stop those fires like from continuing to spread. And so, there are no strings attached. We're just trying to, get our tech in the hands of people stopping these fires. So if you know anybody there, reach out, suds@fion.tech, SUDS at FION.TECH. And that'd be great.
And final question, how can people get in touch one more time? What's the URL? Are you on social media? Can they email you? Just final time, how can someone get in touch if they're interested?
Yeah, so our website is fion.tech, FION.TECH. My email is suds, SUDS at fion.tech. And my Twitter is ITZ, SUDS, it's suds. Fion's Twitter is FionTechCO, so at FionTechCo. That's basically our main channels for reaching out to people.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. Best of luck with what you're working on.
Yep. Thank you, Matt.